Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Game Changers Devotional. We're certainly glad that you joined us today, and we don't believe that anybody shows up on this call by accident. And we know there are people that show up sometimes for the first time, and there are people that are here every week that we have the call, and other folks drop in when they can, and that is totally fine. But we believe that when you're on this call, it's because God has you here. I want to encourage you to invite others to join us as well, and you can do that by just sharing our call-in number. And as you know, you can dial directly into the call without having to punch any codes or anything in. As we get started, I would like to ask that if you don't mind to mute your phone. That helps reduce the background noise and kind of helps everybody stay focused, and so that helps out a lot. Also, don't forget that we have everything that we've recorded over the past years on Spotify, and you can find it on YouTube. And like I say, it's one of those things you can share with somebody if you want to, or if you want to go back and listen to anything, you can do that. So we're going to go ahead and jump into today's devotional, and I'm going to be leading that devotional. And for those who don't know me, I'm Michael Pate, and it is always a privilege and honor to be able to lead the devotional. Today I want to talk about leaving a godly legacy, and I want you to think about what kind of impact do you hope to have on the world and the people around you when you're gone. In 2 Timothy 4:7 it says, I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith. You know, I think the first thing we have to ask ourselves is, are we living a life worthy of imitation? Would we want people imitating the way we live? 1 Corinthians 11:1, I believe, it says, follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. So I want you to think about it. Is there somebody you've had in your life that has gone ahead of you, maybe older, sometimes even younger, that who their life actions have inspired you and those around them to live with a greater purpose and live with integrity? You know, and our daily choices and character come from a foundation and legacy that we leave. So the second thing I thought about is we need to always remember that when we're leaving a legacy, we are investing in future generations. Psalms 78:4-7 says this, we will not hide them from their descendants. We will tell the next generation the praiseworthy deeds of the Lord, his power, and the wonders he has done. He decreed statutes for Jacob and established the law in Israel, which he commanded our ancestors to teach to their children, so the next generation would know them, even the children yet to be born. And they in turn would tell their children. Then they would put their trust in God and would not forget his deeds, but would keep his commands. You know, imagine going out in maybe your front yard and planting a tree, and eventually it may be a shade tree. It'll eventually provide shade, or maybe it's a fruit tree and it'll provide fruit, but it can do that for generations to come. And so investing our time and wisdom in the lives of younger people is a powerful, powerful way to leave a lasting godly impact. The third thing I thought about was focusing on eternal significance. Matthew 6:19-21 says, do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And I had a friend, and his dad spent his entire life building his dream business. He worked long hours, it caused him to miss family dinners, and he kept telling himself that one day, just one day, he was going to slow down and he was going to enjoy it all. He became really successful, and there was no doubt in anybody's mind about how successful he was. But when he passed away, people remembered him more for his company than for his character. And his son said something that really stuck with me. He said, my dad built an empire, but I wish he had built memories. Think about that. My dad built an empire, but I wish he had built memories. You know, that hit me hard, because at the end of the day, what we build on earth is going to crumble. There's no doubt about that. But what we build in eternity our faith, our love, our service, those things are going to stand forever. You can spend your life chasing what's temporary, or you can invest in what's eternal. And a godly legacy, it's forged through faith that stands firm. It's a love that never fails and a life poured out in service to God and to people around you. I was out last Wednesday because there was a death in our family, and last Tuesday was the funeral of my father-in-law, Mr. Bruce, and he was buried that day. He was a solid man of God. He was a leader in his church. He was respected by the men that he had supervised, where he was over the power and recovery plant at a paper mill, and he was loved by his family. It's hard for me to think about him being gone because I was so fortunate that he allowed me to be a part of his family, and I got a second dad out of the whole deal. And I could ask him how I could go about repairing something, and 99% of the time he could tell me how you could do it. I've seen times when I would ask him how we could do this, and he'd say, let me think about it, and the next thing I know, he has built some type of jig or some kind of tool that we could use to do what we were trying to do. And also, if I were trying to understand what the Bible was saying in a certain passage, I could call him, and if he didn't immediately know the answer, he would research it, and he'd call me back with an answer that was much more in depth than my tiny brain could handle. And when it was during hunting season, we would go in for the weekend, and he would let me sit in one of his deer stands and hunt out of it, and he would say, "Feller, I hope you get that big one if he steps out." Now, I never told him, but I never even put a bullet in the chamber because I'd never shoot a deer that he'd worked so hard to try to catch up with. And he was one of the most physically strong individuals that I've ever known, and he was known for doing some pretty incredible feats with his strength. But yet he had a giving heart, a kind heart, and he would do things for people or the church. He'd never say a word about it. People wouldn't know how things would happen or where they got something. It was because he did that. He didn't look for anything. As I stood in the line for visitation, man after man that he had worked with or he'd been around came through that line, and they were telling me about how he had such an impact on their lives. Because of that impact he had, his legacy is going to live on forever by all those that he touched. But see, for Mr. Bruce, leaving a godly legacy wasn't about fame or fortune. It was about living a life that honored God and had a positive impact on those that were around him. Both when he walked the earth and now that he's gone, that impact is still going on. He was intentional about the seeds he would sow and the example that he set. And he always was striving to finish the race well and leave a heritage of faith. He no doubt heard the words after he took his last breath, "Welcome home, my child, well done." So today, I want to challenge you to look at the ways you can live your life in a way that you can leave a godly legacy. Maybe you're already doing a pretty good job, but you know that you need to take it up a notch. The question is, for right now, are you going just to think about it, or are you going to make a change that affects the people around you and leaves a legacy that will live on forever for God? Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for the day you've given us. I just pray that you would be with each one of us, dear God. That I just pray that each person on this call has got a Mr. Bruce in their life that is pouring into them and is leaving their legacy, and that can be passed on, dear God. I just pray that you would give us courage to walk in your light when we're at work, when we're out in public, dear God, that your light shines from our lives. I pray that you would put people in the pathway of each person on this call that needs to know that you love them, God, and you want what's best for them. And I pray that we'd be observant and open to those people that you put in our path. I just pray that you would be with all the people on the call and their families. Dear God, if there's anything going on that somebody's going through, I lift them up to you. You know what each thing is that somebody might need a specific prayer for, but when we call out and that we're praying for them, you'll take care of what that is, dear God, and you'll give them comfort and peace. I just pray that you would keep everyone safe on this call and bring them back next Wednesday. And thank you so much for all that you've done for us. Amen. I want to thank you for joining us today on Game Changers Devotional. And, I hope something that I said this morning spoke to your heart or challenged your faith. And it's one of those things that God has just truly blessed a lot of us on this call with things that He's done. Also, if you were encouraged this morning, don't keep this call to yourself. I would encourage you to invite somebody to join us. And remember, you can share those devotionals that we have on Spotify and YouTube with anybody you would like. And sometimes it's a big step for somebody to jump on a call, but if they can listen to it, and even if they don't show up on the call, if they're listening to it, it makes a difference. That's what we want to do, and that's what our goal is. And we'll be back next Wednesday morning at the same time and on the same number. And I want to encourage you to stay strong, stay faithful, and keep being a game changer in the world all around you. Thanks, everybody.